Hi, everyone. Welcome to Creative Leadership. I'm your host, Jeremy Sirota. The author, Toni Morrison, said, if there's a book that you want to read, but it hasn't been written yet, then you must write it. My guest today wanted artists to have tools to show them where their money came from. Those tools didn't exist, so she built STEM. She wanted artists to understand the terms of the deals they were signing. No one provided that, so she built STEM Check. She wanted artists to have access to capital that didn't require giving up ownership. The industry didn't offer it, so she raised $100 million for an initiative called Scale. And now she's launched an exciting new company called Tone, which she refers to as the rebirth of STEM's original mission. It's automated royalty accounting, transparent dashboards, and one-click payments. Vision can sometimes be that simple. See what's missing, don't ask permission, just build it. Today, I'm excited to have Milana Rabkin, co-founder of STEM and Tone, join me today. Milana, welcome to Creative Leadership.
Thanks, Jeremy, for having me. Excited for us to have a conversation that's recorded and other people to listen, because every time you and I talk, I feel like we hold a rich conversation.
Yeah, we've had many conversations over the years, so I hope I'm going to have some good questions here that maybe you haven't heard before and require you to think a little bit deeper about what leadership means to you and what it means to be creative as a leader.
Amazing. Hope I have enough coffee to wake me up, get me productive.
All right, well, since we're not live, if you need to take a break to get a coffee, we can do that too and edit all this out. But let's jump right in. This is something I think about a lot. Most people view creativity as belonging to the artist, to the creative types. And the operational layers belong to the executives. And you've said operational innovation is creativity. Can you make that case for the audience? What's creative about building a better royalty accounting system?
I think that the best creativity, or maybe we'll call it creativity, comes from naivety. When you don't know how things are supposed to be done, you kind of make them up, right? And there's so much study that's done on little kids, and little kids are way more creative than adults because they have no boundaries. They don't have an idea or a mental model for how things are supposed to be done. So they just do what they think leads to the right result. And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. And actually realizing that I can be creative through operations or through building a business was the best unleash for me personally, because I feel my best when I'm creative, but I'm not artistic in any way. I can't make music. I don't even know how to make music, right? Like, I've learned a lot about it, but I'm the last person you want me to do that. I went to film school, and I learned very quickly that as much as I aspired to be a screenwriter or a director, I was never that good. So then I moved into like the producing side, because what I am really good at is navigating relationships and people and putting pieces of a puzzle together. And there's a lot of creativity in that as well, is what I learned. And I'm not like artistic in any other way. I'm just not, right? I am building a house, and as much as I love architecture and design, I'm terrible at it. My husband reminds me that every day, but I love the process of learning and putting things together, and I appreciate art. So learning that I can apply a level of creativity to building a business was really empowering. As it relates to royalties and Tone, because I never did royalties myself, I only witnessed it being done and was thinking to myself, wow, this is inefficient, or wow, this can't be the best that exists. I kind of just did what I normally do, which is figure out the best experience I've had doing something else and applying the learnings of that to the problem I'm currently trying to solve.
It's an interesting way of framing it. I'm actually appreciative that you brought up the house, because so many of the best leaders are architects. And what I find very interesting about architecture is that there is a precision to it. There's a certain load bearing that you must hit, or else it doesn't work. But there's also something else you mentioned, which is not having limitations about what's possible. The best architects are ones who don't look at the past and say, that's how you have to do it. They look at the past as a springing board to how to do it differently, or how to do it better, or how to reimagine it. Is that how you approach business? Would you apply that analogy to your approach?
Yeah, I would go actually a little bit further. So we've been working with this architect who is very well established, and I think he's incredible, for the last 5 years, because we actually designed another house with him that we never ended up building on a property that we bought in Texas. And then we brought him in to do this house that is our forever home in LA. And in between those two, we actually didn't start with him as the initial architect we talked to for the LA project because he's not based in LA. We brought in another firm in LA. And just the difference in working with both of them was incredible because they didn't approach it the same way. So not all architects are created equal. Let's start with that. And what makes Don, who's our current architect, so incredible, and I think this is true for a number of other architects, is that they built from the inside out. He spent a weekend with us in a house to understand how we move. So he observed our nuances and the patterns of how we exist, everything from our morning routine. My husband and I do not wake up and go to bed at the same time. He's an early riser, works out in the morning. I lay in bed until the very minute I have to get out of bed. He goes to bed way later than I do because he has a lot more evening shows he commits to going to. I'm in bed the minute after my daughter. It's at like 8:30 or 9, right? So we just have completely different flows. And I need coffee in the morning. So the way he designed the house is understanding those nuances such that in our master bedroom, my husband can enter and leave the room without ever turning the lights on and ever bothering me. It's just the way that he designed it, and that I have a coffee machine in my closet so I can have coffee. Right. So he made sure that the electrical plans reflected the fact that we needed outlets in a closet, which you typically don't need, just so I can have a coffee machine to wake me up. Right. So designing from the inside out, and the way we approach product, it's actually very similar to an architect because that's what they are. Product people are architects. They need to deeply understand the problem, the way that the customer is moving through their journey, and build a solution that is the most efficient and meets their needs and their demands. So you're absolutely right. Like, they are very similar. And I've actually learned a lot from both worlds. And I think the thing that I pride myself on the most is observing patterns of behavior or solutions in other unrelated fields and applying them to what I'm doing.
I still can't get over the coffee machine in your closet. This is like blowing my mind now. I just
Not fancy. It's like a Keurig. It's like a single dose Keurig. My husband doesn't drink coffee. There's literally filtered water right next to in my laundry room or in my bathroom, so I can fill up my water, but I'll have a carafe next to it that I fill up once a week, and then I just like pour it in and I make coffee right there. I don't have to walk all the way to the kitchen.
I now just gonna be thinking about this all day long because and it doesn't matter that it's not fancy. It's just that it's that one cup you need just to get you out of the bed because
Yeah.
I relate to how you I a lot of times I'll just bring my laptop into bed with my coffee and work the first hour of the day from bed. My daughter's older; she's
I love working
14.
in bed.
Yeah, she's self-sufficient. Yeah, sometimes I'll make her snacks for the day. She's like, "Dad, I wanted to make them myself."
Oh,
Oh,
that's great. Have you taught her how to make you coffee and bring it to bed for you?
she used to do it. I may need to bring that back now, especially since I've been really trying to perfect. I like my fancy coffee. I have a very fancy coffee machine. Her foam art game is not as good as it could be, so we're gonna have to work on that.
But you bring up an interesting thing, which I want to give you an example of sort of how I took that learning of having something that's really important to me immediately accessible in my home to like the work and the product. With Tone, it's a royalty accounting system. You can't run royalties without understanding a contract. It was very silly to me that no royalty accounting system stored contracts or summarized them. Like, why not?
Hmm.
That whole workflow and all of that information lives elsewhere, and then someone has to go elsewhere to receive it and then put it into a royalty accounting system. Why isn't it just stored there from the beginning? And that's what we did with Tone.
Yeah. When I look at, and this is more broadly than just the music industry, I've always seen, I'm a big fan of the three pegs to a stool. I don't know why this analogy always resonates in my head. Power of three, I guess. You have three elements to what works really well for creatives in this industry is you have rights. So as you're talking about, as a former lawyer, understanding rights, particularly in creative industries, is super important. Everything flows from the rights. There's a reason why there are so many record executives who are former lawyers.
Yep.
Second, everything you're talking about here is resourcing. The resourcing you need to make things work in a world in which we are an exception to a caveat to a broken rule. That's how the music industry works. You build a perfect system, it's going to break on day one. And then the third is relationships. And I won't mention names, but even before we got on this, you had an artist who was texting you looking for help. And that is such a incredible founder entrepreneur mindset of, hey, I'm going to work on this and support this artist. And then I'm going to flip immediately and come into this conversation and talk to you after you probably just did some stuff with the family as you're thinking about planning the rest of your week. It's, I don't know. I'm always impressed by people who can juggle between all these different mindsets and switch between them very quickly.
Thank you. Yeah. Um, I don't know how else to do it. My brain is really bad at singular linear thought. I've been diagnosed with ADHD since I was a teenager. And they say a lot of creative people also have been diagnosed with that. And I wonder if it's just because we're capable of jumping through threads of thoughts consistently. And my brain needs that. I can't do one singular task. It drives my husband insane. It drives Kristen, my business partner, insane too. And like people are amazed because in like planning sessions, I'll be on my phone or on my email and it drives them crazy and they'll think I'm checked out and they'll ask me a question. I've been following it along the whole way and I can answer it very thoroughly. And they'll be like, wait, what? We were like not expecting you to actually have been paying attention. I'm like, I am.
See, I'll tell you something. I have something similar to that, but different. And it's actually a pro and a con for me. And I'm curious how you relate to this, which is I think out loud.
Mm-hmm.
I love playing with language. A good portmanteau is one of my favorite things in the world. But half the things that come out of my mouth are just goofy and make no sense because I'm trying to work things out loud. Number one. And number two, it's one thing when you work on a team and maybe you're an independent, you're an IC, you don't even have a team who works under you. You can say things out loud and it doesn't matter. When I first started in this role as CEO of Merlin, I was just talking out loud and people were thinking I was giving directions and setting vision. And I was just trying to work things out. And it's really useful and helpful for me, but I had to do a complete reset with the team. And sometimes even just say, don't take any direction from this. I'm just thinking out loud. Please react to it. I want your opinion. And I'm just wondering do you have something similar where something that you do that's really powerful for you actually can cause you challenges and problems in how you operate?
Oh my God, so much. I had to go through intense executive coaching the first 2 years of STEM because I had to redo every behavior that was valuable and helpful to me as an IC and as a talent agent, because most of it was actually hurting me as a leader. So what you're talking about is definitely one of those things, which is thinking out loud, right? When you're an agent, thinking out loud and sharing ideas is how you engage and connect with a client. And the more ideas you have, doesn't matter if they're just shooting the shit, it makes them feel like you're thinking about them and thinking about them differently. So they like engage with you and you work through getting to the right outcome or coming up with refining the ideas together. But in our space, if you're not an IC and if you're a leader and you're saying things, people take everything as action that comes out of your mouth. And it took me forever to learn this and figure it out. It drove Kristen also insane because she's like, you would say things and people would then go act on them or not know if they need to act on them. And it would be confusing because sometimes it would contradict the things that I'm trying to give them direction on, or they wouldn't know how to prioritize it because they would prioritize it more importantly because it came out of your mouth and not mine. And so absolutely. I think the other piece of it was the style in which I spoke, where as an agent, you use hyperbolic language, right? You have to, because everything has to seem grand and everything has to be exciting. And you're consistently selling. You're selling your clients to other people. You're selling yourself to your clients. You're selling ideas to your client. You're selling your clients' ideas to other people. You're selling them to your colleagues to get them excited about the client. Like you're just consistently having to hype people up. As a leader of a tech company, when you're dealing with pragmatic engineers and product people that are consistently questioning the truth or the validity of things, and you want them to do it, using hyperbolic language shuts them down and they lose trust in you. And I had to completely change the way that I would talk about things with people. And instead of hyping up ideas, I had to also learn how to approach a problem without giving the solution, which is also very hard for me, and being able to outline my questions or my thoughts in a way that would lead people to the solution or the outcome. And it was so hard for me to do. It took years of retraining muscles and mental nuances, not nuances, but like the way that I was so accustomed and wired to do.
Yeah. It's almost the mental construct about how you get from what's happening in your brain to the output.
Mm-hmm.
And for me at least, I always want to be very careful about the filter I put on that, because it's that ability of what you just mentioned, to have the ideas, to have the ways to think differently about systems and processes and people, that gives you your strength.
Yeah.
So you don't want to control it so much that you lose what is so crisp and interesting about how you can change systems and build companies. But here, Elaine, I have a good one for you, because I'm curious how you reconcile this. You also said you built your career on an axiom of, when someone says no, I hear try harder,
Mm-hmm.
which isn't hyperbolic language, but is hyperbolic thinking.
It is.
And I'm curious how you reconcile this relentless determination without falling into that rhetoric. Like, how do you pair those two together and control that and manage that?
I don't know if I do well, but I'll tell you that I do it. It comes down to my fundamental belief that context is everything. Without context, you can't drive alignment. And I'm not saying you need to build consensus, because I think consensus is bad in most circumstances, but you need to be able to get people to align with a decision, whether they agree with it or not, because they have the context that you have, that they can see the problem or the opportunity through the same lens. So if someone says no, and I feel strongly about it, I go quickly to how much context and what kind of context that they have, and is there information that I have that they're missing that I could share to change their fact pattern, to get them to align. Or sometimes no can mean not yet, right? Like when you're pitching investors and they say no, it could either be truly no and you agree with them because they're not the right fit based on their interest and experience in what you're doing. Cut those people out, right? That I'm not going to try harder to convince someone who's not there. No could also mean I don't see the opportunity the way that you do. And if I think everything else is aligned and they're not a fit, or they don't think they're a fit, then it's more like, what information are you missing and what can I provide for you to make you see the opportunity here? And honestly, like with investors are interesting with like raising money, you also don't want to try too hard to convince them, because then they're going to continue to have questions, and that just like becomes a big pain in your ass overall. You really want an investor that builds the conviction that you have and is going to be along for the ride for both the ups and downs. So like the investor case is maybe a more challenging one to apply that to. But in terms of decisions internally, right, about what we build, what we don't build, what we prioritize, who we sign, who we don't sign, we also have the opposite side of it, which is that maybe means no. So when we're hiring and we're on a maybe, every maybe hire we've made has never worked out. So we've learned from that. And so what we tell ourselves now internally is that if it's a maybe, it's a no. So there's both sides to it. And they probably do contradict each other at times.
Right. Which, sounds like humanity to me. And
Yeah.
there is also something to, I'm going to say something contradictory also. One of my biggest learnings in my first year as a CEO was the importance of repetition, which in other leaders, I saw it. I knew there was clearly a reason for it, but I just found it honestly boring. I always wanted to say things slightly different and lean on different areas and explore different spaces. And all that does is confuse people.
Yeah.
They don't know what direction. It's like a starburst going in all directions. And that doesn't give clarity to people about where to focus, where to put their energy, what's a priority, what matters. And I had to completely reset and realize that my role was to provide direction and clarity, and then empower them to make decisions, even if they were going to be wrong.
Is there an example of like that aha moment where you're like, oh shit, I got to change this now?
There was, and it was fed to me a very strong executive team. And there was actually two moments. There was one coming off my first board meeting where someone in the board meeting from the team summarized what our priorities were for the year. And it was kind of just a hodgepodge of things the board had to say. And it's not that we didn't listen and weren't respectful and thinking about those, but they weren't trying to set our goals for the year. And so that was really important to me to say, wait a sec, they're not in the day-to-day of our organization. They provide strategic input and guidance to us, but we have to take that and figure out how to implement that for the mission. So that was sort of a first moment for me very early on. And then the second moment was just, you want people who strategically challenge you. And you want them to know that, and you need to tell them over and over, this is your role. And I had someone on my exec team who came to me one day and just said, the team doesn't know what to do. I said, what do you mean? They have roles and responsibilities. I said, you're going so fast and in so many directions, they can't figure out what matters.
Mm,
And to me, I hit a brick wall. And I thought I was being innovative and creative and creating curiosity. To me, though, not to them. I was talking to myself. And so I had to learn how to talk and meet people where they were, what excited them, what encouraged them. And that's hard because you have to put your ego aside. You have to put what you sometimes care about aside and put yourself in their situation. And that was really impactful. And I'm happy it happened very early on as well.
yeah. Um, it was also a big learning lesson for me in the same way because I can relate to what you're talking about. Because I remember early on, I was like, let's do this and let's try this and this and this. And let's get everyone excited about the opportunity to innovate and do things differently and have less like structure. And then I realized people actually love structure. They love clarity. They love knowing what the priorities are. And something as simple as coming up with like annual, what we call them internally, rocks, and then breaking it down to quarterly rocks and breaking it down to measurables that every person can like can revisit on a weekly basis and know whether things are moving in the right direction. And every week having an all hands where you're reviewing the quarterly rocks, the scorecard of the week, the measurables that are moving the needle, and how they tie back and reflect on the annual rocks and goals and how that ties into what our 5-year, 3-year plan look like. And doing this every quarter and every week and the cadence of repetition is so important because until we did that, and I was like, hey, what's the objective for your team this quarter? And people couldn't repeat it back. And I was like, oh my God, this is a problem. Like it's written down, we've reviewed in the beginning of the quarter, but if you're not doing it every week and repeating it, literally looking at the same slides over and over and over again, it just doesn't work. It's why that was like, I couldn't believe how simple things actually need to be in order for people to be able to absorb them.
And it's not because, and I know what you're saying here, it's not because these people aren't free thinkers, they can't operate independently. It's just they're not in your head. And
No.
unless you create, as you said, that structure, that's what allows them to understand what's truly in your head. That structure is the funnel for those instructions.
And people want to feel momentum.
Mm.
And so giving them a target and being able to give them not necessarily the resources or the tools, but just like something that helps them view how they're moving towards that target allows them to have a frame of reference for their own growth. And that's really important because if you can't define what success looks like for any person, you can't measure their outcome either. And you can't help them grow. And like, unless you have a company full of people that are growing, your company is not going to grow either.
You said something earlier that I wanted to come back to is this, you've worn many hats, you've had different careers. You were a film student, an agent, founder, scaler, second time founder.
Yeah.
Is there a through line? We've talked about some of the things you've had to change,
Yeah.
but is there a through line in how you operate? And I'm curious what that is. And I'm also curious whether that has served you well or that's limited you.
And how I operate.
I can give you an example. So
Yeah.
let me give you my example. I can give you two examples. So one is what I referenced a little bit earlier, which is instead of telling people what to do, I'm a big believer in empowering them what to do, setting the vision and goals of where we're headed, but not coming in and trying to manage that. I find that easier in theory than practice. It takes a lot of focus, and I constantly have to fight my desire to do everything.
Mm-hmm.
So my two through lines are, I understand the importance of empowering others to act independently and be proactive. At the same time, it fights against my instinct, which is just to get in there. And I burned myself out. It was year 2 or 3. And this was, we were just kind of coming out of the pandemic and things were starting to open up. And I realized, wait, I was working from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. every single day. That's 14 hours a day straight.
Yeah.
It's because I was tinkering with everything. I was letting people do things, but then I would come in, I'd make comments and I'd say, oh, here's how I can improve it. And I felt I could contribute to everything and I needed to. And it was truly holding me back. And I still fight against it. I want to get in there and I just have to say, no, that's going to be what it's going to be. And if I continue to operate in this fashion, it's not going to allow people to develop and grow and learn. It's going to burn me out. That's my example.
Yeah. I think the reason I'm struggling with what you asked as a question is that I'm not a typical operator. And so I have a through line of a mission in everything I've done and what drives me. And it's simply to eradicate the notion of a starving artist. It's the thing that I've talked about this in I did a Medium blog post about why I started STEM when I was leaving UTA. And in writing that, I realized that the thing that's driven me comes back to the truth that I grew up in a family of creative people and musicians. My dad, my grandpa, my mom, like everyone, and none of them could pursue that as a career. It was always a hobby, and that killed me because I saw how meaningful it was to their lives and how important it was. And yet they had to have more traditional jobs. And when I wanted to go into the creative field of filmmaking, my parents said the same thing, be a doctor or lawyer. And I couldn't believe that they couldn't believe that being a creative could actually be a sustainable future in a business. And I've done everything in my power to change that, right? Like from being an early age, I'm representing digital creators and YouTube stars and showing that they can have a viable business that's independent, to then working with independent artists and helping them have the tools and the infrastructure to run their business independently without being taken advantage of, so they can keep the value of what they create, to now with Tone, being able to understand all of their income in a way that gives them financial freedom in the future, and be able to account to the other people who they depend on to collaborate, so that those people see their cash flow as soon as possible, so that they can then continue to sort of be sustainable themselves. So that's the through line of everything I've done. In terms of operating, the most freeing framework that I learned about company building was understanding that there can be a visionary and an integrator, and those can be two separate people. And as a CEO, I'm not the operator, I'm more of the visionary role. So going back to our conversation about ideas and filters, what everyone gets from me and what everyone needs from me, both on the STEM and the Tone side, is vision. And vision both in terms of product, in terms of relationship with clients, as well as culture for the business. So I come up with the what and the why. My job is to set the what and then give people the context and the why, right? I am terrible at that. Everyone does everything in their power to keep me out of the how, because I'm not a linear thinker. If you rely on me to set the path towards execution, it will not be streamlined. So in terms of being aware of my strengths and my weaknesses, it took me a while to figure out the team I needed around me, but I needed a small group of people that are really great at either killing my ideas and being the filter for them and helping to bring things forward that are in line with the objectives, right? But also giving us the freedom to test some ideas here and there in terms of resourcing, and then taking the really important ideas that we all aligned on and being able to execute them in the most efficient manner before, so that we can learn whether it's working or not before I come up with another idea.
I love, there's a lot of different roles you want within the company, but you kind of mentioned the strategically challenged operator. You mentioned an operator, the person who strategically challenges you. The incubator clearly is my most exciting because I love the ideas also. I actually serve both worlds. You can't be a corporate lawyer for 5 years
Yeah.
and not be process driven, but I can do it and I can do it well. And I find, honestly, sometimes joy from it, but it's the ideation that I find the most exciting. So having the incubator and then having that change agent, which is another really interesting role in a company. Who's that person who's going to come and get excited with you and figure out how to make it work? Because everyone's doing what they're doing and they like their lanes and they're already maybe at capacity. So you're basically saying, we're going to change things now. And any organization, no matter how flexible it is, there's going to be a certain amount of friction that comes from that.
Yep.
That you have to kind of I always call it get to the top of the mountain. And then once you're on the downhill, everyone's excited, or if they can start to see the top.
Yeah.
But when you're starting at zero at the bottom, most people look at that and they look up, they're like, I don't want to climb that mountain because I can't see what's on the other side.
Or I don't know what the first milestone I need to hit is to know whether or not I can get there. Like, how do I get out of base camp? It's hard. It's actually the hardest thing is to get out of base camp, because once you're ascending, you're ascending. But but if you can't figure out your way out of base camp or you're too afraid, you're stuck.
By the way, just on a side note, amazing book you should write, How to Get Out of Base Camp. Andreessen Horowitz would absolutely publish this. Let me know if you want to work on this together. I love that analogy. It resonates in my brain, mostly because I used to be a mountain climber.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I was in Boy Scouts for 12 years. So backpacking and mountain climbing was just part and parcel of what we did. Long time ago. But anyway, I want to come back to something else you said that relates to this concept of how do you implement vision and structure. And you talked about how every year you write down 10 things that would be wins if they happen.
Mm-hmm.
Not asking for the list. What I'm curious about is twofold, which is one is how many of those actually happen? And then not why don't they happen? What do you learn from the ones that don't?
Yeah, that's the most important part. Just writing it down doesn't mean anything. You have to reflect on it, and you have to reflect on it not just at the end of the year. You should be looking at it on a monthly, quarterly basis, or when you feel stuck. You look at it and you say, what's the one thing I can do to move it today? Going back to what we were just talking about, I had a moment a couple weeks ago with Brendan, who's our CEO of Tone, who I've been working with now for 6 or 7 years. And he's like my Kristen on the Tone side. And we had like we lost a deal, and we both felt pretty defeated around it. And it's very easy for anyone in that moment to do one of a couple of things. One is just sulk in misery, right? Just sit there and like absorb feeling down on yourself and feel paralyzed. The next thing is slightly better, which I always do, which is like give yourself 24 hours to mourn something. Mourn the loss of a deal, a client, an opportunity, a miss on an objective. Like give yourself the full ability to like feel all the feelings related to it, because I think that feelings never go away. They're just suppressed, and then they roll into another issue and you're carrying it with you, and that's worse than anything else. But after that 24-hour moment, do one thing to move things forward. Whether it's just sending 3 outbound emails to potential prospect if you lose one deal of people that are in a similar size of an opportunity that to the one that you just lost, right? Cold outbound. That's one little action. Doesn't take that much effort. And then like it creates momentum. Maybe one of them will convert into a conversation, right? So in that case, Brendan and I remember just sitting outside, decided to do a bad ideas brainstorm because we like needed to stir up something. And we spent 10 minutes. I turned the timer on my phone and I said, we're going to spend 10 ideas and we're going to spend 10 minutes and we're going to shoot 10 terrible ideas. Like, don't worry about whether they're good or bad. Just 10 ideas of anything that we can do to move this next thing forward. And we did that. And out of that, we got 2 or 3 ones that we both thought were worth bringing to the team. And we did. And we then encouraged the team alongside with us, using those 2 as an example, to spit out 10 more bad ideas. And it's just like, and from there, now we have 2 or 3 new growth initiatives that we're going to implement this quarter before the end of the year. And this is a short quarter that's going to accomplish and move and create momentum for the business. And it came from us losing one deal, right? So I think going back to like part of your question, which now I'm forgetting because I know we were talking about ascension on a mountain and then we were talking about something else that you asked and I forget what that is now.
Around the ideas you write down at the beginning of the year about what wins would happen.
Oh, yeah.
Particularly the ones, what do you learn from the ones that don't happen? What does it mean for you?
Well, the ones that don't happen, you have to figure out like how close did you get or how far did you get and why? And you usually don't reach a goal for the same reasons. One is you're bad at predicting what you're capable of, right? You're just not good at saying, hey, I have enough time and resources to get there. And sometimes you set a goal without being cognizant of what the resources will look like throughout the year and what you're actually capable of doing. The next is there's always an unforeseen reason that you can come up with, but it's rarely ever true and it's just an excuse. You might be like, I didn't get to do this because it was unforeseen and whatever. And I called bullshit on that. And I just think you're bad at predicting what you're capable of and what's realistic. So maybe like a level of delusion. By the way, that's the other thing too, is like when you come up with a win list, like it shouldn't be too delusional. There should be a little bit of delusion in it, but not too much. Because then like you don't learn enough. Then you're like, oh yeah, this is too ambitious.
Yeah. When I worked in tech, we'd call those stretch goals, that were unachievable, but if you did, you would have moved mountains. And you always wanted 1, maybe 2 at the most on that list because you wanted something that was going to really challenge you, but not be judged on whether you achieved the impossible or near impossible.
And that's an operating philosophy that is different company by company and founder by founder and team by team. We very intentionally do not use OKRs because we have a hard time with that. So the difference between like setting OKRs and rocks is just the philosophy behind them. With OKRs, most of the objectives are somewhat moonshots. And at an earlier stage of a company, that could be really dangerous because then people may not perceive that there's enough momentum to motivate them to keep going alongside all the other bullshit challenges that you have as a startup, right? So we chose not to use OKRs. We used a concept of rocks because the concept of rocks is like you want to get 80% or better with what you're doing. And it's not that you're shooting for the moon, but it's like you're shooting for the moon and you're landing on the moon. You're not shooting for the stars and landing on the moon. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I got that wrong in the beginning. And that's just dependent on the team that you have, right? If you're working with a super pragmatic team that needs to feel momentum because everything else is so hard with what they're doing, your goals might be better reflected at something that's more tangible and that's more achievable just while they're getting the engines going and while they're, lubricating the machine. Because once the gears are working, then you can continue to like add more ambition to it.
Yeah, we don't do OKRs at Merlin. We do have goal setting, but what we talk about, and we use similar language, we talk about rocks. What we really talk about rocks is like, how are you keeping focus? And then the antithesis of rocks, of course, is sand. What is
Mm-hmm.
the sand that's bogging you down? And how can you
Yeah.
unlock from that? And in a creative world in which everything that could go wrong usually does, because you're dealing with what I call the creative world is like the Tasmanian devil. It's just like a whirlwind of chaos that
Mm-hmm.
hits you. And so it's the sand is coming, and it's less about not how do you move your focus from the sand to the rocks, but how do you get out of the sand as quickly as possible
Yeah.
when you're stuck in it. And those are very helpful to help people develop tools for that, because as you know, you can spend an entire day, quote unquote, working and yet get absolutely nothing done, which is
Yeah.
insane to me.
I, I don't know if you've explained to your listeners what the analogy is that we're talking about, that you and I both know what it means when we're saying sand and rocks, but it might be helpful for everyone else if you haven't, for them to
Do
know
it.
the analogy. Do you want me to do it? Do you want to do it?
No, you do it, please.
Okay, so the concept of rocks is that you pick the 3 or 4 big rocks that you're gonna move forward, and you prioritize doing that. Because if you put them in a jar, if you put in the big rocks first and then the smaller stones and the pebbles and the sand, you'll fill up the jar more efficiently. But if you start with the sand and then the smaller rocks, by the time you try to put a big rock in, you might only be able to fit 1 and not all 3. You're filling the jar with too many small things that don't really matter because they're not pushing the boulders forward.
Exactly. What I like to say is these framing mechanisms really help our brains. I'm a big fan of creating scaffolding for people. So that's
Mhm.
structure. But I'm also really love putting together containers where people know the container to put something in. This is the useful container. This is the distraction container. And those just simple analogies is why I brand everything in our company. And you do something similar. There's a reason why you have branding for everything. It helps people understand what it is and where it fits within the overall company's goals and mission and rocks. I also just find it fun. I did mention I love a good portmanteau. So naming things is like half my fun in this role.
Yeah. And honestly, it's all storytelling. The best way to sell something is not to sell something, it's to really understand the narrative of how it makes a difference in someone's life.
Yes, that's right.
And sometimes you have to create that narrative.
Yeah. Someone told me once when you go to Home Depot, because you're trying to hang a shelf, you're not there to buy a drill, you're there to buy a hole. And yeah, it's a funny one, but it makes sense. You're trying to buy a hole and
Yeah.
you're trying to figure out how to solve that. And it's just an interesting way. I love flipping things on their heads and looking at it completely differently. Someone once described it as if an alien showed up on your doorstep, how would you explain to them what a phone is?
Hmm.
And it sounds really simple, but when you start to really think about something that's so alien, they have no concept that anything exists here, it really forces you to break things down to the simplest level. It's a complex exercise. You can't do this with everyone, right? The rocks and sand and pebbles, that's a much easier one with the jar. But the alien exercise, you really need to spend some time. But when I've done it, it's been so effective because it really helps you to step outside of yourself, which is the hardest thing to do, and to
Hmm.
see it from the perspective of an outsider, a consumer, a 5-year-old. Like I love my favorite is treat me like I'm your 5-year-old cousin. Now explain it to me again.
Yep. I mean, that's how I use chat most of the time. ChatGPT is I describe things to and I say, can you play this back to me as if I were a 5-year-old?
Oh, I've never done that. I need to do that. That's
So
a
good.
great use case.
So good.
I want to do just a couple more as we wind down here. Here's a really important one to me because this is a pay it forward type of podcast. If you were meeting with a group of 20-year-olds and they said, Milana, tell us what's the number one creative habit, the number one leadership quality that you wish you had developed earlier, or you wish you had, what would it be? What would you have us focus on? And if you want to filibuster for a sec, I can give you mine because
Yeah.
I had some time to think about this one. I learned this recently from someone. I started writing a lot more. It's my second outlet for thinking. I just enjoy it. I'm not great. Despite how much I write, I'm not a great writer. It's really, I have to really work at it. And what
Did
this person taught me is focus on quantity over quality. Produce first, edit later.
Mm-hmm.
And the concept of that is if you step back and think about that from a 10,000 foot, what you're saying to yourself is get out of your head and put it down. I especially love to write on physical paper. The act of writing on physical paper makes your brain operate differently. And I used to always try to wait till it was like perfect and it was so edited and it was so clear and I just had it down pat. And then I was producing nothing. And so going back to what you were talking about this moment, the concept of momentum, so important. I love
Mm-hmm.
that idea of when you're frozen or you're in base camp and you're starting at zero, just taking the smallest little baby step, even if it's not the most important, but you now have something to build upon.
Yeah. I think that's definitely it. The other one, I don't know if this is so much of a creative habit, but I think it's the most impactful habit to learn early and practice. And I think it is what sets the 1% apart from the 99. And it's crazy. And I've had to learn this the most painful way ever, but it's so simple. Simply do what you say you're going to do when you're going to do it.
100%.
And if you can't, get ahead of it and let everyone else who depends on you know and renegotiate the timeline. And it's not really a renegotiation, just better reinstating it. It is unbelievable how few people do that. And it was the fundamental like building blocks of STEM and its servicing culture that I had the team do this. And it is the reason why we built such a strong reputation is simply because we just did what we said we were going to do when we said we were going to do it. Unbelievable how few people get this right.
It is so powerful. It is truly so powerful. I'm so glad you mentioned that. The other one that it's just for people who are starting their careers, be responsive.
Yeah.
Just
Pick up the phone.
pick up the
By the
phone.
way,
Yes.
learn how to pick up the phone. It is transformational for your business when you're dealing with like higher level executives in entertainment that built their relationships in their business before email and text messages were the primary forms of communication. Just pick up the phone and call someone. I like say this to my 20-year-old all the time. We now have very few of them. They've all become 30. And now I actually need more 20-year-olds. I think it's like one of the biggest risks to both businesses is we don't have enough 20-year-olds. We're mostly aged out of that. They just don't do it enough. Like pick up the phone and call someone. And by the way, do it at a time when you would be the most nervous too, because your clients want to hear from you, not just when things are going well, but when things are going bad. The other thing that I think sets them apart was the willingness to have a hard conversation. If a client didn't get the playlist they wanted, being the first person to call them and say, hey, I'm sorry. I know it's Friday morning and we're not on the playlist that we thought we would be. Let's talk about it. Not being afraid of confrontation in a way that, how do I say this? Because there's confrontation that's like you're conflict avoidant, right? And that's a weakness, I think. But being able to take accountability for when things don't work well and have an objective point of view of a conversation together about what worked and what didn't work is such a powerful experience and such a connecting experience with the other party that things aren't always going to go the way you want them to, but being avoidant of conflict and having that conversation, you will lose trust with the other party. And just being willing to do it allows you to have a moment of connection, which is so powerful for the future of your relationship. Like making them feel like you're in the trenches with them and that you're willing to take accountability or take acknowledgement of when things don't work out the way you intend them to.
It's not always failure, but accepting that you didn't succeed this time.
Yeah, or things didn't work out, right? It's not exactly what you wanted. And if you don't have that conversation about what possibly went wrong or what didn't happen, then you're living in delusion still.
Well, let us all not live in delusion. It's occasionally fun to dip our toes in that. But I do want to kind of come to the end here, and I prepped you with this one because this is the most challenging question to answer on the spot, but it is my favorite question. How would you describe yourself in 6 words?
Said she can't, so she did.
Oh, I really like that. Yeah. That's
Goes
great.
back to the thing you said before about me, which was like when someone says, no, I hear try harder.
Yeah. I love that.
And it's all about also like breaking perceptions of what's possible, continuing to create momentum and moments of despair just for the emotional impact of that word, since we're talking about storytelling here.
Yeah. Before we close this out, anything we really didn't talk purposely about STEM or tone. It was really the focus is on leadership, and it's great. Thank you for talking about both your success and also being vulnerable too about the challenges of leadership. Any last words about STEM or your new venture, tone, as we talked about at the beginning?
Yeah, I think both of these businesses are really there to provide infrastructure and also tools for other business owners in the creative space of initially music, right? That's where we're focused today. On the STEM side, it's about not just getting your music out there and heard by as many people as possible, but getting the data feedback really quickly to be able to acknowledge what's working and what's not. Going back to setting goals, right? On the STEM side, every conversation with our artists and clients start with what does success look like for you, and being able to create, call it like our rocks that are joint with the client around what can we work together towards as initiatives to see if it's working or not, and if we can get to where you want to go, and what are the things we need to put into place to get there. On the tone side, it's really important for the people who own a piece of music to understand what it's worth and what that means for them. It's kind of like their internal scorecard of their lifeline. And it's insane to me that people who work in music oftentimes don't have that information until it's too late. And everything we're building with tone is fundamentally there to change that. And the way we're addressing it is starting with the label as the client and making it easy for them to run not only their accounting and not just royalty accounting, but really understanding how the music's performing that they own or license, and making sure that that same level of visibility gets pushed down to everyone who's a collaborator so that they can all make smarter business decisions around the content. Um, I'm excited about both. I'm grateful that I don't have to operate either businesses and I have Kristen and Brendan to do it, who are truly amazing operators, and that they allow me to continue to set the vision for both and kill parts of my vision that they think are distracting.
Well,
And
that
I
might
hope
be,
and I wish that for everyone to
yeah.
have people like that in their lives.
No, it's great that you have those two people in your lives to help challenge you, because it's really important to have those in our roles and what we do. And I'm so thankful for you joining me today. A lot of this has been great.
It's been fun, and I love that every conversation we have is very much like this, and now we finally get to share with other people. It's always
Exactly.
talking to other CEOs.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way, and I appreciate you coming on, and see everyone next time on Creative Leadership.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thank you all for listening.